You know how Christianity is misogynistic and racist and, oh, I don't know, discriminatory against people of other religions and so on. That's not really the case. And what I mean by that is this, that as I reflect on, let's say, the conflict in Gaza, I can't get my head round how this can possibly be solved without Christ. And I would say this for so many conflict and so many other things. So in looking at the story of the Samaritan woman, we've come today in our Coffee with Jesus onto how Jesus deals with this woman. So we'll look at verses 7 to 9 today. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." Now let's just consider that. First of all, I think it's lovely that Jesus asks her for a drink. It's a need he had. He was thirsty. And he spoke to her, and she was quite shocked that she spoke to him for these two reasons. She was a Samaritan, and she was a woman, and he was a man, and he was Jewish. Now, the problem with the Samaritans was this, that it was both a religious and a racial division, and it had gone on for centuries. The Samaritans had really become, to be honest, Jewish heretics, considerably so. In fact, a popular prayer amongst the Jews at that time was, "Lord, do not remember the Samaritans in the resurrection." So there was a strong antagonism in that way. You know, I've seen that in different things. I remember just speaking to a Muslim man and how surprised he was that we just talked. And why not? You know, I would speak to anyone of any religion because I want all people to come to know Christ. And then I think of just actually speaking to a woman. In fact, I remember I tried to speak to my neighbours in Dundee who were Muslim. I tried to speak to the women and they wouldn't speak to me. They crossed the street rather than speak to me. And I said to one of my friends who work with Muslims, you know, what have I done? What am I doing wrong? And he said, "Oh, Dave, they're not going to talk to you." But he said, "Let me deal with it." And it was so funny because a couple of days later, they crossed the road to speak to me. You know, not even just walking away, they actually crossed over. And I said to him, "What did you say? What happened?" He said, "Oh, I told them that you were a holy man and that therefore, you know, you were safe," which I just thought was brilliant. But here is this woman astounded that this Jewish man is speaking to her. A strict rabbi would never, ever talk to a woman. But he didn't just talk to her, he asked her for a drink, and so he would have used her drinking utensil and so become defiled. And that's what I think is wonderful about this, that the gospel of Christ clearly crosses barriers. We talk about being inclusive in our culture, but much of it is just talk, isn't it? We don't really practice it. But the gospel brings real inclusivity. We're also told that the woman was surprised because Jesus was defiling himself by speaking to her and by drinking from her utensil. But again, Christ sanctifies what he touches. I remember speaking to somebody who thought that you could only communicate the gospel through people you had relationships with, people you knew. I think that really limits the gospel. I think we don't just communicate to people we know and like. Here's a tired man sitting down talking to a woman who in the context of his culture he should not even have been talking to. And yet he was able to. And we'll continue with the conversation tomorrow. As I say, I think it's a beautiful thing. God bless you and see you tomorrow. Bye.